Hi everyone, this is the demo of the game that I'm going to submit a second assignment for programming. And I think because we have 5 minutes, it's best if I just first share how the game works. And after demonstrating, I come back to the coding, okay? Because I'm setting the game to one life each round, I kind of chose to play 5 rounds just to show what works. But you see here, I had a collision with a bad apple, and straight away I lost. Uh, so I think this is good enough just to show that the collisions work. But one thing I've noticed is that the collisions with the rotten apple are very difficult to understand how they are happening because I'm resetting the image over and over and over again. So it's like, it sounds almost unfair, to be honest. So first I set the rotten apple to the same way that I was doing with the good apple, but it was getting very boring because it was very predictable. And that's why I kind of made the rotten apple to go crazy all over the shop. But that's but the way that I wrote the collision is exactly the same, and the images have exactly the same size. So as far as I can see, it is working. Okay. The the name here, I just took a blah blah blah, yeah, da 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 da, and number of games, I chose 5, which is exactly what happened. The scores, let's just have a look here at the scores. Before, I took a few samples and I've checked before, it was working just fine. So if one small fruit was taken, it actually gives 1 point. If you get a large apple, it gives you 10 points. Okay, so the average is working, the lowest score, I suppose, is working, the highest is also working. What's the problem here? Firstly, as I said, because I set this apple to go like too random, resetting the location over and over again, sometimes you really don't see this collision happening, and I think it would cause a bit of anxiety if this was a real game. And also, another thing, yeah, I think that's number of lives. Because of my nested ifs, I think is in the nested ifs the issue. I'm not being able to play too much with the number of lives, so I just keep set to 1. Okay, but ideally, I think it would be best if I could change this. So now let's have a look in the code. As I say, we have a main character, which is the dog class. The dog is pretty straightforward. Usually it was, initially I was using width and height, but after just hard coded, so I kept the variables here, but they are not being used. And this is a very simple, straightforward class, okay? I'm using getters. I'm not using setters. For some reason, I didn't feel the need for them, but again, it's something that I could do in the next assignment. The groups of fruits, apple and rotten, they are very straightforward. The only one I think is worth it to talk about is the food, because I'm loading an array of images, and these, as you could see before, the images, they appear randomly. The type of fruit appear randomly. I used a YouTube tutorial to guide me through of how to do this. Initially, I was working the whole thing out in the main screen, and for me it was being easier. But once I had to bring the food as a class, after talking to Peter, I realized that it became much more complicated for me, at least. But basically here, I have the array with the 8 fruits. Sorry, you're over 5 minutes already. With the 8 fruits. And after that, I have a few loops to figure it out, that, to run through the range, sorry, the name of the fruit, that is literally starting with fruit, and after just change the end, which is from 0 up to 8, and increments by 1. And after that, we have this kind of random selection with this new variable called index, which end up saying that foods I means that is the food which is called fruit index in the array format, which is literally randomly going through each one of the fruits that are available in the data folder. Okay, so we have here from fruit 0, position 0, up to position 7, which is the number 8 here in the array. Okay. Another thing that I think is worth it to talk about, I have it in the draw session, other loops here, the foods y dot display, just displaying the images randomly. And here in the collision, I also bringing another loop. Again, is literally doing the same thing, but here I'm talking literally about when the dog is eating the foods, or so when the collision happened between the two images. I couldn't use, we have a, sorry, just to finish the draw session, we have the same thing here, collision happening for when he collides with the good apple, that gives 10 points, and the score here is adding by 10. We have something similar for the collision with the rotten. The difference here is that the collision with the rotten has some nested ifs, because here is where the game ends. And here is actually where I think I have a bit of an issue, but anyways. The key pressed, I also, it came from the snake game that I was working before. Here I'm incrementing by 100 because that's a kind of wanted that the dog would kind of jump or something like that. So, and in the end, we have the collisions here written, one for the foods, which is the smaller pieces here of fruits, another rotten, which is the rotten apple, and another for the apple itself. The apple and the rotten are exactly the same. So I wonder if actually I could do something slightly better here, because it's the same thing. But I'm not sure if I could. But the food here is just changing because the size of the images are different. So again, another thing that's important to say is that, as far as I understand, I couldn't use the same collision that we had in the Pong game, because here I'm treating my images as rectangles, and in the paddle, in the Pong game, we had the paddle, but we had the ball, which was circular, and at least it didn't work for me. Okay, so I had to find another YouTube tutorial to show me how to do the collision for other shapes. This last session is coming from the Pongate game. I kept exactly the same structure, but if I could do this, I wasted quite a few time, 1.5 weeks doing another game. If I could do this again, I would try to set my game based on time. So it's like, I don't know, 60 seconds, something like that, other than thinking too much of heist or number of games. I don't know. I don't know. No, I think it works. It works well. I just think that actually it's not even here the thing that I think is more relevant. If I would start again, actually, what I would do is that in the collision with the rotten apple, have kind of an extra rule saying that if the time is over, the game is also over. So it's like having an extra layer there. So actually, anyways, I would keep the same structure here. Sorry. Um, what else? The player. As I said, the player is coming from pawn gate. And that's all I have. Again, in the readme session, the only thing I'm saying here is that yeah, for some reason I need to set my life one. And I think this is in the nested ifs. I think that's where the problem is. Not sure, but I think it is. Um, and the sources I have here, the reflection starts right now, and hopefully submit today. Thanks.